As the ANC wraps up its NEC meeting this afternoon, the party has ordered all of its ward councillors to go to the FNB Stadium in Johannesburg tomorrow in order to conduct a roll call. Now, the party claims that the action is intended to reinforce accountability and demonstrate its commitment to the provision of services. Let's get the view of Professor Dirk Kotze, Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa. Prof, a very good afternoon to you. As you've just heard, of course, we are looking and focusing on the narrative, really, of the NEC over the last 2 days. It would seem that local government is seen as a battleground now, given how the party has been placing strong emphasis on just fixing municipalities and rooting out corruption, as they say. Is this a genuine attempt, do you think, at course correction, or does it symbolically function as electioneering?
Well, I think, good afternoon, first of all. I think this is a way in which the ANC wants to have put now very specific focus on local government, and it's obviously in preparation for next year's local government election. And I think specifically with this NEC meeting, it is to take stock of where do they stand. And then in the first session, President Ramaphosa presented already or referred already to a plan of action, and actually it referred to some aspects of this plan of action. And I anticipate that tomorrow, when they meet now the councillors, that they will go into in more detail about what is exactly this plan of action, so that they can start to prepare for next year's election. It's about a year from the election. And I think this is the appropriate time for all political parties to start to focus very specifically on how they are going, what will be their strategy in the election process, the campaigning, as well as how they are going to especially position themselves also in relation to other parties. Because there are nowadays so many of the local authorities that are actually hung parliaments or some form of coalition government. And I think what we've seen with the coalitions at national and provincial level, it's very important to be prepared for that.
Yeah. Prof, I'm going to ask us to pause our conversation. All right. Unfortunately, we have to continue with our political discussion here with Professor Kotze. Prof, a very good afternoon again to you, and thank you so much for your patience. Of course, that was an important race to take, as South Africa was on the edge of their seat, just to find out how those two gentlemen will do. But let's continue then in terms of what is happening and playing out on the political arena, particularly as it relates to the ANC NEC. You were talking about just having to wait and see, particularly in terms of the actions that the ANC will take in terms of the roll call for councillors at the FNB Stadium tomorrow. I mean, the party has described this roll call as a way to review progress and also to enforce accountability, it says. From your perspective, just continue then on how effective such a method will be in actually holding councillors to account. Even ANC President Cyril Ramaphosa having to say that he's calling for heads to roll for underperforming municipal deployees.
Yes, I think the event tomorrow won't be able to really call councillors individually to account. I mean, there are simply too many there, and they are from all over the country. I think more specifically, I expect that they are going to focus very much on what I referred to earlier on as the plan of action, and how the different councillors must start to prepare themselves and what they must do in this last year. This is absolutely a critical period for all the parties in order to make an impression on the voters and the communities in general. And if there can be an improvement, and it's not so easy to do it in a 10 to 12 months, then it might make a sort of at the last moment some impact. So I think this is what will be the focus. President Ramaphosa referred, for example, to the fact that they must, in terms of the way in which they relate to their own constituents, that they must make it much easier for them to have access to the services of local authorities, that they must work on the improvement of the infrastructure in the different local authorities, that they must start to think about the reform of local authorities. The white paper on local government has been published. There is now feedback on that from the public. and the financing. And I think that is, and we've spent a lot of time on that in terms of looking at the feedback from the Auditor General and what the ANC as a political party can do in order to improve the financial situation, and as well as the management of the finances. One aspect which is very often criticized by both the Auditor General and SALGA and other groups in the local government domain.
Yeah, and then also just talking about utterances, I mean, when you consider that, as the party's Secretary General Fikile Mbalula referenced, the ANC having over 4,800 of these councillors, how best would it be to ensure that these party representatives in local government remain aligned with the ANC's mandate?
Yes, that's absolutely important. Because, what we have seen last year with the local and especially provincial elections might still play out at national level next year. So, for example, KwaZulu-Natal is going to be a critical province in that respect of whether the ANC is going to lose as it lost in last year in the provincial election, especially against the MK party, or whether they will be able to counter that in anticipation of what they know already about what happened last year. So these are all aspects, I think, where the the representatives of all the parties, but now specifically the ANC, where they can play a role, can anticipate, can plan. Something which is also very important, which is, I guess, is going to become part of their preparations, it's to identify the best possible candidates. And that is in itself not an easy task. We've seen in the past how contentious it has become, and sometimes actually very dangerous, that some candidates were actually killed in assassinations in terms of internal competition. So these are all aspects that must be addressed in anticipation or in preparation for next year's election. And that means there's more than enough work that's there for them. On top of that, I think what is not mentioned is the ANC in December will have their National General Council, or at least that's been planned for that, which means there's going to be another national event which will most possibly very much be dominated by these issues that we are talking about now.
Yeah, and I mean, just having listened to the ANC Youth League's General Council too, you can hear in that narrative that there is a sense of urgency and crisis. But I just want to go back to what you said in terms of having the councillors align back with communities. It would be very interesting to see that this kind of pressure that the ANC leadership is exerting on these councillors, would it motivate these councillors, or will it create, for councillors on the ground to, as you've just rightfully pointed out, to go on, competitive mode? Fundamentally, will it strengthen the connection to the communities, or simply do you think it will increase loyalty to party structures, which is probably what we don't want to see, particularly when you look at services and delivery of services not happening in the scale and the pace in which communities want?
Yes, this is a very pertinent question from you. I think there will be a bit of a tension between their loyalty towards their political structures, the local branches of the ANC, because that's where the nominations will start. There's going to be an election committee chaired by former President Kgalema Motlanthe. But still, the nomination process will start at the local level, and it's a political process. It is within the party and the party branches. But at the same time, in order to have the more general support, they will need the support of even people who are not necessarily members of the ANC, but who are, for example, say, well, we are satisfied with the work of this councillor, and therefore it is by indirectly actually a support for such a candidate to stand again. But I think these are the dynamics that we will start to see. For the ANC, it's a major test whether the branches have recovered sufficiently, because many of them were in disarray in the past, in order to be able to have a nomination process which is more or less fair and open and not manipulated by the inside different groups within the ANC, because there's a real chance for that. And if that becomes the pronounced way in which the nominations are taking place, that will work against the ANC.
Absolutely. Either way, it is going to be a very interesting few weeks for the ANC. But thank you so much, Prof, for your time. Really do appreciate it. Professor Dirk Kotze, Professor of Political Sciences at the University of South Africa.